Y'all have got to stop waiting on the benevolent organizations and start setting boundaries right now. That is not to dismiss the systemic issues that go on in organizations, but to help you acknowledge what is within your control right now. One of the most common things for people who are from working class backgrounds, and yes, I realize, Marxists, that if you're not part of the top 10%, you are likely part of the working class, okay? But there is a different experience, intersectionality, for people whose parents did manual labor and this is their first time in a corporate, professional, white-collar job. That these people get very exploited because you're told your whole life as a working class person that if you work really hard, it will be recognized. And there's virtue in doing that, there's dignity in doing that. That is the ideology behind capitalism. And that is not rewarded in white-collar work. That is a red flag, a big red arrow saying, exploit me. So if you do not learn how to navigate that, how to set boundaries in a way that isn't going to get you fired, it's going to be an ongoing issue. You can acknowledge the systemic issues that we have and still make efforts to set boundaries. That's not one undoing the other. You are not saying, I'm completely fine with everything going on. You set boundaries. Most of us do not have the class privilege. Since we're not all owning class, Marxists, most of us do not have the class privilege to just opt out. Most of us do not have the class privilege to not have to navigate enough of the game to survive. If you do, good for you. But even then, it's questionable where you're getting your money from. You're still part of the system. And you can't dismantle a system that you don't understand. That's not how change works when you look at labor movements, civil rights, etc. It's always people on the outside and the inside of the system. Civil rights wouldn't have worked without the marches and the protests, and it also wouldn't have worked without sympathetic judges and lawyers on the inside. You can use the unwritten rules to be a psychopathic asshole, or you can use them to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. But above all, until the day comes, which it may or may not in our lifetimes, when organizations are held to a higher standard and there is less systemic abuse, if you don't see your work as transactional, you are going to be exploited. Because there are always going to be people who will take advantage. There will be people who just can't read your mind and aren't going to monitor your workload like you do. Nobody else is going to know your workload like you do, and don't know that they're asking you too much. If you don't know how to do these things, for whatever intention, you are going to be taken advantage of, and you are especially likely to do that if your parents did manual labor and you've never seen this type of work done before. And sometimes people who are first-generation professionals also have family members who mock them for not having a real job because they're not doing manual labor. Even though desk work can absolutely fuck up your body, it's in a different way, right? And over time. And so there's a guilt that can come with setting a boundary when you know mom's lifting 300-pound patients and my dad's laying brick. I'm sitting at a computer. All type of labor is valuable. There is no unskilled labor. You deserve rest and a break, and you do have to demand them because there are always people who would take advantage. I think there are these extremes that get painted as normal and usually get assigned to a generation. So I'm a millennial. When I was younger, it was always, those millennials don't want to work. And now it's Gen Z, and it's only a matter of a few years before it's Gen Alpha. These are narratives that come from the elite that have always happened for decades because they never want to look at that they've rolled back with labor rights and benefits and that there are consequences to that. But bear with me, because I just read a book that was by an organizational psychologist whose first book I really liked. And I was so disappointed to read him. He had a chapter talking about how people want their organizations to be their morality police like parents, and how insane it is for people to expect their organizations to be their parents. And I was just sitting there like, that may be some people. I certainly get comments where I think, but the vast majority just want you to stop harming society by like dumping toxic waste or taking a bunch of energy or abusing workers. They don't want to be actively harmed by you. Then there's like the other end of the spectrum, which is like, step on my throat, daddy. I love capitalism. I'm angry all the time, and I know I don't get paid enough and I struggle to live, but just, it gives me a sense of identity to know that I'm better than other places. And somewhere in between, there are the people who know that the system has been built on inequality, that the only rights have been gained through revolts, demands, and changes in law, and that those didn't change the unwritten cultural rules. That's my expertise. That's where a lot of people who have any amount of privilege, which a lot of us have, at least privilege in some areas, struggle to see how these unwritten rules are barriers for people when they think they are just the way they are.